Hello, everyone. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet as we get set to break down everything that happened in unrestricted free agency. Very interesting period here. We're excited. I know it's only been a couple of weeks, but it feels like forever. We are excited to be here. Kenny, I know, is excited to join the show after he was just talking on Winnipeg Sports Talk. So let's not wait any longer. Let's bring in Kenny. Here he comes. Ken Wiebe, my friend, I got to tell you, before today, I was in Ken Wiebe withdrawal. It has been far too long, my friend. How have you been? How is your summer? And most importantly, how's the golf game?
Great to be with you, Sean. Fantastic that we could fire things up. The withdrawal is real, yeah. The pangs of not having enough shows, not enough time. You're trying to get caught up with your family, which is very important, but let's hope to get out on the golf course soon. My game is very erratic. I've had a couple of great rounds, but I'm having a little trouble with the flat stick currently. So much so that Marshall Patterson has offered to help. Our guy Derek Ingram is doing an important job over at the Olympics with the professionals here. Yeah, he's a little busy, so he can't help me out. But DI's got a book that just came out about the psychology of winning golf. So I'm going to have to give that a quick read and get the space between the ears get ironed out on those greens, start feeling a little bit more confident. But a lot of courses in Manitoba are in great shape, and we'll look forward to getting to visiting a few more of them in August as the Manitoba Golf Tour 2021 will pick up. But it's been fun to get out when we could. But we've had a lot to cover and discuss in the last 48 hours, if you will. And looking forward to breaking it all down here with you, and then being joined, for those who are joining us, Nate Schmidt will be on the program around 3:20 p.m. So
that's right. Do we have Nate Schmidt entry music? I don't know. We gotta get moving on that right quick if we're gonna get that done today. But I wanted to ask you right off the bat, Ken, on a day where you make no unrestricted free agent signings, can you walk away with the belief that you won the unrestricted free agency period? Because I take a look at what all these other teams around the league have done, and I'm thinking to myself, it's hard for me to take a look at today and look and see who the winners of today's are. There are no obvious winners to me. I take a look and I think of the teams that have been active, and I look at what the Jets did. Jets set out. They've got a very clear idea of what they want to do. They needed to address the back end. I was thinking to myself, this is going to get crazy. The way we saw, Seth Jones gets $9.5 million, Cale Makar, I believe, $9 million. You were taking a look at the prices that were heading into this unrestricted free agent defense market and thinking the Jets, we know, needed to address this. Paul Maurice talked about it. Kevin Cheveldayoff talked about it in their year-enders. They had to do something. And I was thinking it's just going to get really, really expensive here. Did they have their backs up against the wall? I thought it was a great Houdini act by Kevin Cheveldayoff. And again, maybe the winner, if not one of the winners, of unrestricted free agency period without ever signing an unrestricted free agent.
Yeah, so interesting, and this comment is so accurate here from Tracy. Chevy did his holiday shopping, so I mean, I'm gonna be completely honest with our viewers as I try to be all the time. I'm not a great Christmas shopper, Sean. I'm often that guy on the last, not necessarily Christmas Eve, but like in the last week of before Christmas, I'm usually having to get a few of those last minute deals, and then the prices, sometimes you're not getting a lot of sales. You're not getting the Boxing Day sales on the 23rd. So I think this is very clear, Sean. The Jets had a glaring need. They spoke openly about it at the exit meetings, and as much as you and I, very close to the space that we're currently occupying when we did that last hit for Sportsnet.ca, talking about maybe the Jets should be one of those teams trying to kick the tires and make a pitch to Dougie Hamilton. Dougie Hamilton did a great job, locking down, security and term with the New Jersey Devils. The Jets were not going to be able to be in that price range. But what they were able to do, they added 2 top 4 defensemen for almost the same money, and they don't have to, throw down that long term, but they did not have a band-aid solution here. They were able to get a long-range solution to their back-end issues. They've got Brendan Dillon for three more years, and they have Nate Schmidt for 4. Both of those guys have played top 4 or top pairing roles before, and some people can say, sure, those guys were complementary in those roles, but regardless, the Jets have gone from looking for top 4 guys to adding 2 legitimate bona fide guys with experience, with playoff experience. And the other part that I don't want to discredit or diminish, the importance of bringing in people like this is incredibly important. These guys are bona fide leaders. They bring incredible energy, as people are going to see. If you missed Nate Schmidt's earlier Zoom call, this guy exudes passion, energy. He's an energizer bunny. He always comes to the rink with a smile on his face, loves the game, and he's really going to help a leadership group that was already, I think the core leadership group was solid. These 2 guys are both going to grow into part of that. They're invested in trying to win, and they're exactly the type of players and human beings that the Jets were looking to add in this offseason. And also, too, the importance of bringing back Paul Stastny is massive to me. I just finished saying to Hustler on Winnipeg Sports Talk, Brian Little has always been the conscience of the Winnipeg Jets, and he has handed that baton over to Paul Stastny, and he's done an incredible job in that role. He's still an effective hockey player, a big-time contributor. Some people would have said, well, you should have waited till today to get him for $2 million. Not a chance. They had to go out and make sure they got that locked down. They did, and now they can move forward. And let's not forget about the importance of the Chamber of Commerce contribution from Paul Stastny in helping convince Nate Schmidt to waive that no trade clause and join the Winnipeg Jets. It's a hockey's such an interesting game, Sean. That pay it forward situation. Back in 2018, it was Blake Wheeler making that call to Paul Stastny. Now it's Paul Stastny making that call to his buddy Nate Schmidt. And having 2 players like that waive the no trade clauses in order to join the Jets, you can't, diminish the importance of what that means for a team that has, quite frankly, had trouble at times attracting premier level free agents. So they brought in important people and very solid players, and I think that it really bolsters a core group that has already had some young leaders kind of emerge.
You know what, Ken? I was wondering in one of the comments that Paul Stastny made to Nate Schmidt, which Nate Schmidt was talking about in his sales pitch. One of the things he said was I got thinking about the idea of how many the Minnesota Mafia. We know that there's always been this Minnesota connection. I don't think I've heard it kind of pinned as perfectly as the way Paul Stastny pitched it, in the words of Nate Schmidt to him, and the idea that look, you're Minnesota guys, it's just a little bit north, and you could kind of almost see that comment got the wheels turning for Nate Schmidt, and he was thinking, I'm that much closer to home. The folks can make their way up there. He played his USHL hockey in Fargo, just south of the border. So really, I wonder how often that pitch comes into play, not only if you're him, but if you're Kevin Cheveldayoff for the Winnipeg Jets organization, in the way that they so often go after those Minnesota not draft picks, but hockey players. It's just always felt strange to me that they do that, and there's not really the same kind of reach out towards Manitoba hockey players from what we've seen in the past.
Yeah, it's super interesting for sure, and I think you can't. It's important to remember these guys are close friends. They chased a championship with the Vegas Golden Knights, and they were both salary cap casualties from the Vegas Golden Knights as well. I think there is kind of a unifying situation, and in some ways, Brendan Dillon falls into the same category. He was a cap casualty when the Washington Capitals had to sign their captain Alex Ovechkin to a 5-year deal to chase the Wayne Gretzky's all-time goals record. So I think the more that those guys would have talked, the more they would have, it wouldn't have been a hard sell for Paul Stastny to kind of get the wheels moving. And we know from the earlier Zoom call, and we'll get into it with Nate, but I mean, the fact that he just had to take a little bit of a deep breath, get out in the woods and really think about his situation. I mean, he's had a lot going on. He got engaged last year. He's changed teams now twice, in a very short span of time. And I think that he just wanted to take a deep breath before he was ready to make this kind of a commitment. But you could tell quite clearly he's all in on that commitment now, Sean. I mean, right? That was something that was very clear. He has gone into conversations. He's had conversations with Paul Maurice. He's already, the wheels are already in motion in his mind about, which side he's going to play, who could be his potential defense partners. And I mean, he quite frankly flat out said, I mean, this is a defense core that could help, that can chase be a legitimate contender for what you want to do and what you want to win. So I think the Jets have really bolstered the back end. And sorry, I kind of got circular on that conversation with the original question. I haven't been to the buffet table for a while, Sean, as you know, so kind of went around. Right. But we know that the Jets have had a strong Minnesota connection before, so not a surprise that Nate Schmidt would be the latest guy to kind of get involved with that. And I mean, I think and also too, Brendan Dillon was great in his, what a great story he told about being, you got the neighbor that's always harassing you to come out to play, at Dakota or the Highlander or the Iceplex or whatever for that game. And, last game of the summertime, you finally, break down and say yes. And you go out on the ice and you come off the ice and your life changes in a snap of a finger. I mean, it's, we talked about this a lot during the pandemic, Sean. I mean, you forget about the human element for these guys. Earlier this week, you go to the rink at 8:00 as a member of the Washington Capitals. You get off the ice, you go to your phone, and you find out you've been traded to the Winnipeg Jets. 8-10 months after making a 4-year commitment to the Washington Capitals. And the other thing with Dylan, Sean, I mean, I did a story on him like 2 or 3 days before he was traded by San Jose to Washington. Yeah, and this was a guy who was incredibly invested in the San Jose Sharks, went to the Stanley Cup final with them in 2016, ironically knocking out Paul Stastny in those St. Louis Blues that year in the Western Conference Final. He's really grown as a player. Both these guys, they went from college, they went from undrafted free agents to first pairing kind of guys. They've dealt with a lot of adversity along the way, and they just want to win. I mean, that's the biggest thing that you take from these guys. But that human element was very much on display with both of these transactions. And I think these are both great human beings who are really going to fit in well with the Winnipeg Jets.
You know what I found really interesting, Ken, and you knew this, there was interest in the Winnipeg Jets in bringing Nate Schmidt in before this. There was interest by the Winnipeg Jets in bringing Brendan Dillon in. We knew they were interested in Stastny, and he left, and he ends up coming back. Yeah. I find it very, there's almost this level of staying true to players that even if they don't come here, right? Like the Winnipeg Jets have this habit I found of once they're interested in a guy, they always seem to stay interested in the guy. And it's this long game that they seem to play. And in this situation, it's worked out with three really good players, guys that Chevy liked, wanted to bring in, didn't get to bring in. I guess they brought in Stastny, but they missed out on him and signing him as an unrestricted free agent this year. But he stayed with those guys. Interest stayed with those guys the entire time. And now finally they make their way here. Is there a lesson in good GMing in Kevin Cheveldayoff, maybe, at the very least not turning his back on the possibility of those players, or at least maybe doing things the right way when you're trying to woo players so that even if it doesn't work out, it's like that relationship. You really like that girl or that guy and you try and get with them and they end up with someone else. But you're thinking, if that doesn't work out, I'm going to be right here. Maybe we can give it a try then. That stick-to-itiveness, I'm guessing Kevin Cheveldayoff was able to get a lot of second dates after situations like that.
Well, I mean, it's first you identify. Kevin Cheveldayoff is, very consistent in his messaging. It's about both the identifying players and the people. And once they've gone through that process of identifying that Brendan Dillon was a guy that they wanted to pick up before they went out and got Dylan DeMello, his former defense partner with the San Jose Sharks, you did your research. You knew about the person. You knew about his road. Same with Nate Schmidt. He's a guy the Jets were interested in from the Vegas Golden Knights. It sounds like that never got further than an initial discussion, at least Nate Schmidt saying, quite frankly, he was never asked to waive. But you knew that was the kind of
go through that. Sorry, let's not to. Okay, finish your point. Then let's go through that. Okay.
No problem. I think that they identified him as a person and a player, right? Same kind of a deal. I mean, Cherd Ferguson saying, I think the Jets had scouted Neil Pionk before he signed with the Rangers. I mean, these are guys that had a portfolio on, went back, and you stay involved. You try to identify this landscape and survey the landscape, and you see, well, maybe this guy might be available. So here you go out and get him when he becomes available. You knew what the market was going to be, and these are two guys that are great people, and they're going to be great fits. So when it comes to Schmidt, to me, it goes like this. So Nate Schmidt had a 10-team no-trade clause. Last year, it looked like he was going to be a cap casualty, and the Jets went out and got Paul Stastny. I think they were interested in Nate Schmidt. We don't know this for sure, but based on what Nate Schmidt was saying, it sounds like Kevin Cheveldayoff made a call to Kelly McCrimmon, but it never went beyond that, knowing that I think that Kelly McCrimmon probably told Kevin Cheveldayoff the Jets were on his list. They never made an offer after that to say, hey, I think you have to go ask him if he's going to waive, if we can come to a deal. So that's my interpretation of the situation based on what we heard from Nate Schmidt today. So, I also think it's important. I mean, I asked the first question about that sales pitch that Paul Stastny made, the full court press, and Nate Schmidt went out of his way to try to clear up the situation and say this is what happened, and this is why. And I think this. We've got to know Nate Schmidt a little bit from being around him. We're not pretending that we know him super well, but this wasn't some kind of PR stunt saying, hey, Winnipeg, I didn't say get lost before and now I'm okay. He made it quite clear and abundantly clear that there was no change of heart. He needed to just sort things out, process the situation, and then when he decided he was ready to make the commitment, this isn't like a dipping the toe in the water. I think Elliot Friedman, our colleague, referred to it the other day. This is like the cannonball from the 9-foot board. Like, Nate Schmidt's not just planning on dipping his toe in the water in Winnipeg and saying, guess what, I'm here for 1 year and then I'm out of here. He's fully invested in trying to take this group where this group wants to go, and that's a lot further than one playoff win since going to the Western Conference Final.
I wanted to touch on this question actually, probably 3 minutes or so before Nate shows up on the show here. I love this question from Lisa Lockhart. What do you guys think of the players that we lost? Brossoit, Forbert, Lewis, Thompson, and Pullman. I'm going to couch this quick before I throw it to you by saying I played senior hockey for a decade and a half or longer in Manitoba. And the one of the things that's interesting about senior hockey is you can go from 1 year having one of the best teams in the province, right? And you can be terrible, like getting blown out 15-5 in games the very next year. And what you noticed after a while was it was like 3 players. You were 3 players away from being a good team or a bad team. And if you could, lose your 3 worst players and add in 3 top end players, you went from being a really bad team to a really good team really quickly. So the turnaround is, it can be rather stark as long as it's the right guys going. Now, this isn't a knock against these guys, but Brossoit, Forbert, Lewis, Thompson, and Pullman, these are all guys basically on the bottom end. Pullman's a bottom pairing guy. Lewis and Thompson are on the bottom of the roster. Forbert is a guy who, I think we saw really leaned on Pionk to kind of keep him afloat at many times during the season. The one thing that strikes me today is you bring in guys that are in Dillon and in Schmidt that are higher end guys. They're 2 top 4 guys. And what you've lost here is, one guy who is a top 4 guy who is probably maybe a bottom 2 guy who is playing in that role. Pullman, who's definitely one of their bottom 2 guys. So it's just that I just take a look at what Kevin Cheveldayoff has done here, and I want to come back to this later on in the program, talk about the blueprint that I think that he's establishing here when it comes to dealing with unrestricted free agency, and just the idea of how he's been able to kind of take on a day like this. And we talked about other teams. Some teams are taking a step forward and then a step back. I just see nothing but steps forward here for the Winnipeg Jets, and I don't necessarily see the guys that they've lost here today as being steps back.
Yeah, I mean, important. Good on Tucker Pullman to get some security. I mean, he took a 3-year deal last time with the Winnipeg Jets to get some security. I mean, this is a guy that was a late bloomer. I mean, I think he can help the Vancouver Canucks in the right situation. I mean, we know that Tucker Pullman can be an effective penalty killer and a really effective guy on a third pairing. So, but I mean, for the Winnipeg Jets, it was time to try to upgrade in those positions. They've got young guys that are, we'll get into the young guys later on, but I mean, it was time for Tucker Poolman to get himself a little bit. He's looking for a better opportunity or a different opportunity. I mean, he played on the top pairing last year, so he had a good opportunity. But it was time to kind of check some things out in another place. I mean, Derek Forbert, I would say he had a really good first half of the year. I think when you're looking at a guy who was on a pretty reasonable type of contract, I mean, you weren't going to get top pairing production out of a guy who was making $1 million. So I think at times, we know that Derek Forbert was an important piece of the Winnipeg Jets, but he probably was better suited to be playing on a third pairing role. So, I mean, the Boston Bruins obviously see something in him. We know he's a big, strong guy that can kill penalties and block shots. So they were willing to commit three years at $3 million. So I think that Derek Forbert used in that situation can help the Boston Bruins, but you're not asking him to be a top pairing or a shutdown guy, I don't think. So I think that the Jets, I'm going to say it. I mean, I think the Jets upgraded by bringing in Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon. And I think that they're people that can be part of the leadership group quite quickly as they move forward.
I completely agree with you, because I can tell you he entirely took over the reporters today with the energy, kind of blowing. Share that with the audience that we've got here as we add Nate Schmidt to the stream here. And first off, just want to start off and first of all, welcome to Winnipeg, Nate. It's great to have you. I got to tell you, we're excited to watch you play hockey, but it's kind of universal. As reporters, we're excited to be able to chat with you in the room, because we've had experiences with you in the past, going down to Vegas, having conversations with you. You're such a genial guy. You've got this crazy energy that you bring not only to your team, but you bring it with the reporters as well. It's a ton of fun. I wanted to kind of ask you about that, because you'd said something about I love it that you're a guy that recognizes you got energy, but also that you're the kind of guy that when you walk onto a new team, you kind of blow people away with that energy. When did you notice you were that kind of guy, and how did you kind of continue being that guy? You're an undrafted guy, yet you're not afraid to walk in and make your mark on a team. When did you find that in yourself and kind of realize that was something that set you apart?
Yeah. Growing up, I always was, Liam Jag really kind of, I call it just, myself, a little bit with my family. I was always a little bit afraid to break out of my shell a little bit. When I got to college, I always felt like, I don't want to, step on anyone's toes, or I don't know if I can do this. And as I got older, I realized I was like, I don't really care. I'm going to be me, and I'm going to do me. And here I am. This is who I am, and hopefully I can. I don't scare you off too quickly with the with the first impression. But you know what? That's something that guys get used to. I've had some brick walls, some guys that are tough to get to, and it's always such a pleasure when I finally take down that barrier.
Love it, Nate. You're a guy who had to kind of earn everything you got, even dating back to coming out of college and everything else. How big a role has that played in your drive in becoming the player that you have become?
Yeah, it's never been an easy path. There's a lot of bumps and bruises along the way. It's something that I've learned over my career, right? That you understand how things aren't always going to go perfect for you. You got to be able to roll with it. You got to be able to see some things and some tough times in your life and be able to come out on the other side of it. Because if you don't, this game will eat you up pretty quick. And I just think that for me. I just, this is such a fun game for us to play, and we have a short time to play it. Life's too short to be unhappy, and so and be able to take what you have and understand that, this is not going to be easy. The first time I get out there, it's not going to be easy getting used to the new team again. It's not going to be easy, but I like the challenge. I like to be able to have that type of opportunity to do that within a group.
Nate, along those lines, I'm always interested by guys who make it as high as you do in the game when you have been drafted into the NHL. And there's great examples of guys who've won the Hart Trophy, having done that before. But I've always wondered the psychology of that. You seem like a guy who pays attention to that kind of stuff.
Oh, Kenny, kind of cut out for a second.
Sean, we'll come back to you. He's frozen, right? Nate, can you hear me still?
Yeah, I can still hear you. Uh-oh.
Okay. We'll hope to try to get Sean back here
I think it
I was just telling
I
the
think
story
I know what
about.
you're trying. Yeah, I think I know what you're trying to get at.
Okay.
But we'll let him come back to it when he gets back.
All
Okay,
right.
he's
Is everyone
on the move.
Can we do this?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
See
Yeah,
if I
you're
can.
good.
Sorry,
You're
sorry about that, Nate.
Sorry, Nate. We're going to tell
Your
you that
energy is
one.
interrupting the waves here.
I love it. Adapt
Um,
or die. I love it.
Here, so let's get back to that question. So the idea of being undrafted, you got three guys. You got Brendan Dillon, yourself, Neil Pionk, all undrafted guys. I'm wondering, do you carry that with you? Do you keep that with you throughout your career? And if so, how does it kind of shape who you are as a player, and how do you use it?
Yeah, you know what? I remember I didn't get drafted. I was devastated. You know, I work at a camp in the summer with some of the best 15-year-olds stay in Minnesota. I remember telling them, "Hey guys, I remember I thought I was going to get drafted. I thought I was going to go to the top. I was going to be in the NHL someday. I didn't even know what the minors was at that point. You know, I realized that you have to grind your way through it, but." It was one of the best things that ended up ever happening. To me, you end up getting picked to a place where you like to go. And I always thought of it kind of as a little bit of a blessing when I got a little bit further down. It's like, you know what, teams are just trying to say, we got our guys, we've drafted them, and you know what, we kind of got to give them the first try. I don't know how many times you feel like you hear that the first couple of years, like, we're gonna give our guy a shot, and you kind of just gotta wait and understand that you're gonna come in and you got to earn it. And I think that's something that you take from each team. When I went from Washington to Vegas, you're like, I played on the third pair. What was the third pair at the beginning of the year, and then by the end of the year, we became the top pair. With Lucas Pisa and Braden McNabb. I went to Luca was hurt, and those things they work themselves out over time, and not getting impatient with the process, enjoying it, never trying to hit the fast forward button on it, because this stuff goes by too quickly to do something like that, right? And so I think for me, seeing that and always just having that type of drive to make sure, hey, what, we're here now, but it doesn't really carry over, because you got to prove your worth every day.
So interesting, Nate. I was just telling the story on Winnipeg Sports Talk about the last time that Vegas was in town when reporters were allowed in the room, and how you had the Minnesota State high school hockey tournament in on your iPad. What role did that play, and why do those things remain important to you when you're, this whole don't forget where you came from? I think that's a big part of who you are, but to maybe share why that became important to you.
Yeah, you know what, and not forgetting where you came from, A, and B, not forgetting the people that help you get to where you are. From mom and dad to do all the things they do for you when you're younger, to the coaches that you have. One of my good friends is still my high school coach. A guy that I still bounce off of was one of the guys I talked to yesterday, and the day before, just going through everything. One of the guys that I always lean on, and Eric Johnson. Those relationships never really go away, and I'm someone that has got an inner circle of trust, right, of people that you really care about, and those people that really got you from where you started to where you are now. And I think that's such a something that can sometimes get lost along the way for some guys. As they find, oh man, a little bit of stardom, a little bit of money, where can I go from here, right? I like to kind of keep things a little bit tighter, and like I said, I don't know if Jets fans are ready for the whole Schmidt family clan, holy goosebumps. You think I talk a lot? You should meet my family. I'm like one of the least talkers in my family. I'm telling you that, and you believe me.
Nate, this isn't to minimize your accomplishments as a hockey player, but is there ever any play you've had in hockey that was as nice as that baseball catch you made diving and flipping over the fence?
I don't think so. That was wild. I can't believe that happened. I told Ryan Reeves, I was sitting there with him, and I was like, man, because guys, the ball carries out in Vegas pretty good. And, so I was like, hey, if that happens again, I'm going to jump over the fence and catch it behind, as a joke. And so I went to go run over and jump over the fence, right? And then all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, this thing's not going to get over here. Like, I'm going to have a chance. And then, man, I don't know. I love playing other sports. I think that's one thing that gets lost a little bit nowadays, is kids being able to play other things. So I love playing baseball as much as I can. We still have a college softball team that plays, or college hockey that plays softball in the summer. So it's fun. It's good to get out and yuck it up with the fellas.
Nate, I know you did discuss it on your Zoom call earlier, but I mean, you touched on Ryan Reeves. What can you tell us about the series that you said you went out in the wilderness a bit and made some calls? What was that process like, and what did you learn about Winnipeg maybe that you didn't know before those calls? Because I know that last year when I spoke with you about my story with Paul Stastny, I know you have a very good relationship with him, and Paul was quite outgoing yesterday and talking about how maybe 4 or 5 years ago he wouldn't have really said how great Winnipeg is, but now that he's gotten to know it, it really impacted him and his own future decision and his commitment to remaining with the organization as well.
Yeah, and I think that just seems like I would just say that's a telltale sign for that. A guy like that is, one of the best American-born players. He's got so much, charisma, and he's got guys just respect him when he walks in, and you just, he might not be the most in-your-face, rah kind of guy, but you see his professionalism about him. I know we talked about this a little bit, and for him to say, you know what, Shmi, like the way they do things, and for me that was a huge thing. The way the guys are treated, the way things are ran, how professional things are done. And for me, I'm a guy that, hey, I love having fun. I love going on and doing the stuff with the guys. I love putting together a Masters golf pool or whatever it may be. All those things that come along with being a hockey player and being on a team of grown children. But I love coming to the rink and doing my job every day and having fun while doing it, and doing it at the highest level I possibly can, because that's what makes it fun. The details and doing things the right way. I think that when you do things the right way, everything else will take care of itself on and off the ice. And that's what I think. And when Paul and I talked about that stuff, he's like, bingo, man. Don't even need to say anything else. That's the way I feel about it here. I was like, wow, that's awesome. Like that's what you want.
Nate, in talking with you earlier on, it became clear you felt like you needed a change of scenery from last season. Things didn't quite go where you wanted them to go when you were in Vancouver, and you said that you feel you can represent yourself better as a player than you did when you were there. What is it, when you look specifically at this Winnipeg situation, that you think makes you such a good fit for this place?
Yeah, I mean, you look at just the decor in general, and that's, I mean, hey, everyone can talk about it. Everyone knows that got a lot of skilled forwards and a really great goaltender, but a lot of things about the defensemen. What made this team very hard to play against, and honestly, in my opinion, probably the hardest series that we played that first year when we were in Vegas against Winnipeg. Yes, we won 4 games to 1, but it didn't feel that way.
Yeah.
It felt like every game was a grind. I think we got waxed in the first game, and I remember walking out like, "Oh, guys, this might be the kind of the end." Like, not the end. Like, you're like, this might be our match. Like this might be our thing here. I still think it was the toughest series to play in, and you go back to having a team where we didn't get a lot of chances. All the other years that we played, we got so many chances. The last years of playing in the, in the playoffs with in Vegas when we were there, and in that series, I remember being like, man, this really good decor. Imagine what be a part of, have what you can see with this team when you have a decor as good as that, and hopefully we can replicate and be even a little bit better now.
Yeah, you touched on it before too. I mean, Dustin Bufflin, I think, scored 65 seconds in on that drop pass. The place went absolutely bonkers. And
yeah, I was on the bench. I watched it like front row. I was like, wow.
Better than being on the ice for it, I guess.
Get me out of the way of Buff.
What's going to be like? I mean, as a whole. I mean, to have fans back in the building and to be able to, get back to kind of normalcy. The one thing also too, having been in the Edmonton bubble, the Vegas Golden Knights were the chattiest team on the ice. I mean, did you sort of use that as a way to sort of try to generate energy in an empty building, or how did that develop?
It has to be something, right? Like, it's just, for me, it was so hard. Like I said, that type of feeling, that energy of having the fans back in is just it's unmatched. I mean, one would say that we had a charity softball game. They raised over $175,000 last weekend, which was awesome. And there was 14,000 people at a softball game, and it was just fun. We were playing softball. It was just fun to have energy around the crowd. Guys, you saw guys laying out, trying to make plays. I think it just brings so much more energy to the game. And I just think that, not that the games lacked passion, because they didn't, but it's not as much. You didn't feel it as much when you're on the ice. And for us, we always try, when I was in Vegas, to try as much as you can to create it yourself, but it's really hard to kind of do it when it's just the 20 guys on the bench, and all of a sudden you got one guy yelling at the other team and it's dead silent. You can hear everything they're saying. That's also really weird. Usually those things are kind of matched up between the guys, and Revo's yelling and you can be like, Oh man, he's not saying that to me.
Hey, Nate, I think we're selling jerseys here already. People want to know if you know yet what number you're going to wear. Do you think it's going to be 88 when you come here?
I do know what number I'm going to wear, and it's just I don't know if I'm not sure if Jay's going to be mad at me for putting out there, but Nathan Beaulieu will be changed. He actually changed last week, and so 88 was available, and I will be wearing the 88 car.
Excellent stuff. Get your jerseys, everybody. Hold on, Ken. I want to ask something quickly here. One of the things I liked about your press conference you brought up, you'd said about this defense core as it's built now with you coming in here, you think your line was, I'm paraphrasing along the lines of, not only do I think I could help that this defense core could help us win games, it may be able to help us win a championship. I don't know if you heard this, but at the season ending of Ailes, Connor Hellebuck had said that he sees the Jets not only as being on the verge of something special, but on being a potential dynasty. I don't know if you'd heard that. Do you like that kind of language when guys swing for the fences like that?
Hey, you know what? If you're not swinging for the fences, you know what? You can always. I think you know what. I like his enthusiasm. I love it. I think it's something that we all strive for. I mean, what else are we playing for?
I was going to ask you how how 88 became your number initially, but I'll circle back to Connor Hellebuck a little bit later.
Okay. Man, I wish it was a better story than it was. I showed up and they gave all the undrafted free agents all the numbers in training and development camp. And then I signed with Washington the first day. They didn't ask me. I just showed up and my number was 88 and I was too afraid to say anything. So it's kind of just become me, I guess. And so, I mean, I never chose it. I was more like 21 or 29 in college, and all of a sudden there it was 88 because I couldn't change. I didn't have the stones to change.
It's a reminder of where you came from too.
Yeah, that's right.
Nate, I loved your answer about coming to Winnipeg and kind of the idea of figuring out the city behind the city, saying it's not just about, going to the rink and back home, but kind of finding, the soul of the city in the background. I know that you did your USHL hockey in Fargo, and I'm wondering if you remember all the Canadians who used to flood down there and probably make the malls pretty busy and maybe come check it out. What kind of reputation did the Winnipeggers have when you were in Fargo?
Man, I loved Fargo. It was awesome. I had a great time. Honestly, I was such a fan of playing up there, and if it's any indication, I'm excited for the year to start.
Circling back, what was it like to go up against Connor Hellebuck? And I mean, I know you guys were paying attention. I mean, I guess back in that Western Conference final, there was lots of debate about Hellebuck versus Marc-Andre Fleury and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, anytime, those sort of battles are kind of some of my favorites to watch. I always thought that when you can pair guys up and one guy makes a huge save, the other guy makes a huge save. I love that kind of back and forth. It kind of takes the narrative away from, the rest of the game. You see these two guys that are battling and duking it out, and you get two guys that are just very, at the top of their game. It's like I really enjoy that type of matchup, and I think that Connor's gotten better and better every year. I think that, Marc-Andre Fleury is still one of the, as he showed this last year, still the best goalie in the world. So to get bested by a guy like that in a series, I mean, there are worse guys to lose a series to. You know what? But I think Connor's gotten so much better over the last couple of years too. I think he's still, getting to himself to the next, the highest level that he can be at.
Nate, we learned that you're an outdoors guy, that you like to hunt. You'll find, I maybe you know this already, but areas of northern Ontario and eastern Manitoba, it's pretty much like being in Minnesota. Lots of lakes, lots of woods. I'm wondering. I heard this interesting story that there's tons of bears overrunning a lot of the areas where you camp here and the story I was told is because we don't have the Americans coming up for population control. They like to come up and they like to take care of them.
Yeah.
What is there an excitement level of kind of checking out this area and what it has to offer as far as outdoors and wildlife is concerned? Because we've got some pretty good stuff in that regard.
Yeah, and that's something that's me. All the things that you grew up doing, and you get to be able to go back to doing again. You weren't able to do those types of things when you're in the desert or when you're, out in the ocean. So that's exciting. And I'm excited just to see. I know that some guys sneak up and do little ice fishing and doing stuff like that. So anything outdoorsy, I'm usually in on. So anything that gets me out of the house, I'm like, hey, I can hang out and chill out with the best of them, but I'd rather be outside and hanging out and just, we'll see what happens. If anyone's on here, if you guys know anybody that could maybe hook me up with something like that, that'd be great. Anything outdoorsy, I'm in.
Well, Nate, you talked about playing other sports growing up. What other sports did you play, and how did hockey become your passion and the path you wanted to go down?
Yeah, I mean, I always enjoyed playing hockey, from the very beginning. I mean, I played baseball, I played football until a freshman in high school. I played basketball, soccer, golf. I mean, I picked up Saturday tracks. I wouldn't have to go to work because my dad said if you don't go to work, or if you don't play sports, you have to go to work. And so I said, wow, okay, I'll do anything I can, any sport I can get into, so I didn't have to go to work. So I think it's, I guess it's something that I've always tried doing, so I mean, in the summer, it's like, whether it's softball or volleyball or whatever, anything I can get my hands on. I've been into pickleball lately, anything I can get my hands on, and honestly, it keeps you well-rounded, in my opinion. I think it keeps you really well-rounded. It gets you that much more excited to go back on the ice. Now, hockey's more of a, have to be a little bit more dialed in than you were when you're younger, because you're younger, you can jump around and not skate until the first practice. Well, we can't really do that because you guys have tried us and came on the ice and didn't skate once before training camp. That'd be interesting. I can't wait to see you guys. Schmidt, why didn't you look very good today? Well, I didn't play golf all summer. I was playing softball. I took the skates off all summer, so a little bit different now.
Good stuff, Nate. Well, I can tell you this, if this interview and the one you had with us earlier is any indication, it's going to be a lot of fun for us, especially to have you around for the fans who are absolutely loving you in our comment section. Really appreciate you joining us. Welcome to Winnipeg. And I do got to say, I don't think you're going to need it, because I think you're going to have offers to help you all over the place. But I come from cottage country out here. I've got like 7 buddies who guide and can take you anywhere you want to go. If you're ever that hard up, just come see me and I'll put you in touch with people who will take you out and pamper you for the day and catch you some great fish. Thanks so much for joining us, Nate. Welcome.
Appreciate it, man. Have a great day. Thanks again.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Great stuff. I mean, right off the bat, Ken, you said this before. You'd said this last year when you were talking about the potential for bringing him in, but I know you've always loved talking with Nate Schmidt. What is it about guys like that, other than the obvious, that make it so much fun to cover the game?
Yeah, I mean, he's just he's an authentic person, right? I mean, there's no BS with Nate Schmidt. I mean, he literally, that's his approach to life. He loves life. He loves learning. He loves everything about the game. He loves everything outside of the game. I mean, this is a guy that just, he's a fun guy to be around. That's what his teammates say, right? So you get glimpses and snapshots when you have these small interactions. But this is a guy that he wants to leave his mark on the game, but he knows there's more to life than hockey, right? I mean, he's got this perfect balance, right? But he also knows you don't just take the summer off, play golf, and then come back to hockey. Like, he's invested in the sport. He always wants to get better, and he wants every day going to the rink to be fun, not just for himself, but for everybody, right? I mean, he knows you have a finite amount of time to play in the National Hockey League. And it's quite easy to find that out when you're an undrafted player that has to grind through the minors, right? His appreciation of the game is something that always stood out to me. And like I said, this is a guy that fans are, they already love him, but they're going to love what he brings to the table each and every day. And I mean, some guys don't really like talking about the game or like talking about themselves or don't like to draw back the curtain for you. But Nate Schmidt just basically ripped the curtain off the shower and said, hello, this is who I am, and that's how he is.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. We should get into some of the other stuff that the Jets have done here. And let's get into Kevin Cheveldayoff and how he handled this. I think that Kevin Cheveldayoff is absolutely developing the blueprint of how general managers in markets that may have a little bit of trouble drawing players in through unrestricted free agency, absolutely developing the blueprint on how to handle those situations. Because I take a look at this and I think what happened, Kevin Cheveldayoff he told us before or last week that he'd been checking in on a lot of the unrestricted free agents, that he'd been doing his due diligence, and it didn't sound like things were coming their way. So what does he do? He cuts bait. He doesn't focus on the unrestricted free agency market, and he goes and addresses it the way he does with, and now let's be clear. Losing 2 second-round picks over the next couple of years and a third-round pick does mean that it's going to be tough to be replenishing the shelves, and a team that is maybe a little bit low on prospects as it is. This isn't without risk, but I will say this. It was going to cost a lot of money to fix the defense. The Jets had to fix the defense. The way that the Winnipeg Jets did this, I think they walk away from this. I think this is the absolute blueprint that other general managers in markets like potentially Minnesota, Edmonton, Calgary, places like that need to be following. I think he's way ahead of the curve in this regard. Do you not?
Big thing, Sean. I mean, there are challenges for smaller market teams, whether you're in Canada or the United States. Look at the exodus from the Columbus Blue Jackets and look at what's happening with the Buffalo Sabres in this last 2 week stretch. What has happened to those two small market teams? If you're a longtime fan of the Columbus Blue Jackets, you might have just watched 6 different jerseys walk out of the building, and one of them is Pierre-Luc Dubois, another one is Seth Jones. Who is these are big names that are walking out the door. And what has happened in Winnipeg? You've had a number of core players not only agree to stick around, but agree to forego unrestricted free agency to do so. Yes, they have been paid well to do that, but there are also some team-friendly deals involved, and that is an important thing in terms of growing a core. Jeff Merrick, our colleague, was calling the Jets Tampa Bay light because of the blueprint, right? You have a bunch of in-house guys, homegrown talents who have been draft picks, and then you also have had to add through trade. I mean, all teams, you can be draft and develop, but you also have to add through trade, and that's what the Winnipeg Jets have done. And it's important. It's an important thing to do, and I mentioned the pay it forward element before. That is important when you have veteran guys. And once veteran guys like Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon find out that they enjoy things in Winnipeg, they're also now passing that on down the line to some of those younger players. And that's how you change the narrative about maybe being able to bring some of those higher profile guys in down the road. So I think it's important, and you're right. I mean, the Jets have handled that very well. I want to tackle this quickly too. Ty Jet asked about Comrie. So there's no spin required. I mean, the backup job is a question mark until Eric Comrie shows that he can be a number 2 guy. Of course, you have to say there is a question to a degree, but Eric Comrie has also earned this opportunity with what he's done in the organization with the Winnipeg Jets. And what I would also counter, and it's not spin, one thing that we know that is a fact, Eric Comrie has never had the opportunity to go into the season where the coach and the general manager has shown you the confidence that it's your job to win rather than you have to take the job from Laurent Brossoit, who did an excellent job as the backup with the Winnipeg Jets. Obviously 2 of those 3 years were better than the other, but I think that Laurent Brossoit did an excellent job. And for other folks here too, this wasn't a matter of Laurent Brossoit not being happy in Winnipeg, but this is a guy who legitimately feels he can be a number 1 goalie in the NHL. Right. So you can't be a number 1 goalie in a place where Connor Hellebuck is employed. Connor Hellebuck wants to play 60 to 65 games. So that opportunity wasn't going to be here for him. So Brossoit chose to go elsewhere. Eric Comrie, if he's unable to take the job, well, Mikhail Burden will be battling for that job with him. And if he steals the job, well, that will mean that Burden did a nice job of taking the job. So we know that Eric Comrie has a small sample size of NHL games and hasn't shown the Jets or another team that he is a bona fide number 2. He's going to get that chance now. And if he can't do it, then they'll be looking in other places. But I think it's pretty fair. I mean, we know that Comrie became the all-time wins leader with the Manitoba Moose last year. He's a second-round draft pick. He was a very highly touted goalie coming out of junior, and now he's going to get the opportunity to show whether or not he can do the job at the NHL level. I mean, this is one of the things, too. When you bring in $10 million on the back end and you have to sign Neil Pionk, Andrew Kopp, and Logan Stanley, you're putting yourself in a different tax bracket when it comes to backup goalies. So you have a league minimum backup goalie, and the Jets believe that Eric Comrie can do the job.
Let's talk about the blueprint if you're trying to follow Tampa Bay.
Sure.
Win a Stanley Cup. It's as simple as this. Get one of the best, if not the best, goaltenders in the world. Get one of the best defenders anchoring one of the deepest defenses in the world, and get a forward group that is as deep as it gets. If you take a look at the Winnipeg Jets right now, they've got the goaltender. They've got the high-end skill up front. Looks like they've addressed and really patched a lot of holes in their defense. The one place I'd look at this and think that this Jets team, this roster as it looks right now, or as we expect it to look, falls a little bit short of them, or even the Montreal Canadiens roster that went to the Stanley Cup final last year, is the depth right up and down the lineup. The bottom six right now, to me, still remains a question mark on this team. Ken, does it remain a question mark for you?
I mean, I wouldn't call it a question mark. I mean, Adam Lowry, and if provided Andrew Kopp signs, it's not a question mark to me. We know Christian Vesalainen played in the playoffs, and to me, the fourth line is not a concern. David Gustafsson is ready to be on the fourth line. So when you see Nate Thompson and Trevor Lewis sign elsewhere, you know the Jets are ready to give David Gustafsson a shot, because they liked both individuals as people, and they liked that they contributed to the penalty kill. David Gustafsson was the MVP of the Manitoba Moose, Sean. He's ready for the next level. He's a physically mature individual. He's an incredibly intelligent player. He's got a big, strong build, and he has some offensive upside. He's not going to light up the point sheet, but he makes the players around him better. He's ready for an opportunity. He's going to be the fourth line center. And they also have Jansen Harkins, who is looking at a rebound situation, and they re-signed Dominic Toninato. So, I mean, is that a fourth line that's as good as what the Montreal Canadiens rolled out with Eric Staal, Yoel Armia, and Corey Perry? Well, not right now, but let's see how this season develops. And the other part of it too, Jansen Harkins could be the guy playing on that third line, and maybe it's David Gustafsson and Christian Vesalainen playing together, because we know they have built-in chemistry from their time with the Manitoba Moose. So now you've got speed and skill on that fourth line potentially as well. So let's see how it develops. I mean, some other things can happen, but I do think those guys are ready for more of an opportunity. I mean, I mentioned a guy like maybe a Nick Ritchie or an Andre Kasha. I mean, Andre Kasha is a low salary but high risk, high reward type of player. He's had a 20-goal season, but he's also had concussion problems. I mean, I would think that it's a guy that the Jets would have on in consideration, but there's also the risk of, if he gets hit one more time, maybe he's done from the NHL. So I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how it develops. I mean, I think that there's still right now, I wouldn't say there's a hole in the bottom six, but there are players that need to show that they can do the job full time. I mean, waiters, Brandon Saad would be a great addition for any team, but the Jets basically are looking at around, I think my math, when working with Puckpedia, they have a couple more of those Jets younger players on their roster. So it's around $11 million, somewhere in that range, when you include the LTIR money. But let's also consider Sami Niku is part of that equation. I don't see Sami Niku on the Winnipeg Jets. I think he will be moved for a prospect or to help try to replenish the draft pick pool that did take a hit with the addition of Brendan Dillon and Nate Schmidt. So that $775 is going to come off. So, but the Jets they can't afford Brandon Saad. So would they like to have him in the top six? Yes, but I don't see that happening right now. Will the Jets be looking at potentially a right winger? They don't have a lot of right shots on their team right now, so let's see how that develops. But I don't see it as a big concern. Sunny Side Up is asking about the D pairings. Sean, I have an idea of what I think. How do you think the Jets are going to roll out the back end? At least to start.
I mean, I think that they'll put Nate Schmidt up on the first pairing alongside Josh Morrissey, and then they'll go Pionk and Dillon. I think they like the idea of Dillon's size beside Pionk, kind of the same ideas they had with Forbert, just Dillon being a big upgrade on Forbert. And then I think we're probably looking at Stanley and DeMello on the third pairing, which, I mean, we've seen comfort between those two players in the past year. It seems to make sense if you're bringing two guys in to disrupt. And when I say that, I mean, that's probably a dramatic way to say it. You're not disrupting, Josh Morrissey by bringing in a better player for him to play alongside. But if you're looking for stability and guys who know how to play with each other, you get that from the time that those two players, Stanley and DeMello, played together last year. It becomes interesting, I think, in what's happening below them on the left-hand D. Ville Heinola, who a certain segment, a large segment of the fan base has been screaming to see in the lineup. But where do you see things going forward with him?
Yeah, I think patience is going to have to be required if you're Ville Heinola, and I mean that's probably a tough situation to be in. But this is also very simple for me, Sean. Logan Stanley had an excellent year. The Jets believe in him, but if you're Ville Heinola, you have to beat out Logan Stanley for that job, right? This is very simple. We know the Jets value Logan Stanley. They protected him in expansion, so I don't think they're going to just hand over the job to somebody else. But if you're Ville Heinola, you have to try to steal the job from Logan Stanley going into the season. What we also know, Sean, is that really good teams that go on long runs usually need 8 or 9 defensemen. So if you're Ville Heinola and you happen to start in the American Hockey League and are playing on a pairing with Dylan Sandberg, you have to make it impossible for the Jets not to consider playing you. And the only way to do that, Sean, is by playing great. So is it the situation he expected to be in? Probably not. But I don't think that means that the Jets are going to be looking at moving Ville Heinola. They still believe in him long term. But let's see what happens. We know there's usually going to be injuries. Now we're going back from a compressed and compact 56-game schedule to an 82-game schedule. I think that he'll start, in the American Hockey League. At least that's how it looks right now. And that means he's going to have to be patient. In terms of Dylan Sandberg, same idea. I think a full season, of course, he wants to be in the NHL as well, but a full season in the American Hockey League on the top pairing would not be a bad thing for either one of those guys. And then when you look at the trade deadline, Sean, we've talked about this a lot, those guys could be weaponized in deals, or they could have forced themselves into the lineup by that time, because we know the Jets' back end has gotten a lot bigger, a lot more experienced. And if you're in a win now mode, I thought it was I thought it was more of a warning shot that Paul Maurice sent at his exit meetings in saying that it's tough to have a deep core with all 3 of those guys in it potentially. And I'm talking about Sandberg, Heinola, and Stanley. But now it is abundantly clear that the only way that all 3 of those guys are in it is if there are injuries. So you'd love to have those guys on reserve, but to me right now those guys are going to have to be patient, and whether they're used as chips or just left to marinate, that remains to be seen. But this is very simple to me. If you want to win that job, go out and take it from Logan Stanley, because Sean, you and I know this. We watched it firsthand. This time last year, nobody had Logan Stanley in the Jets' top 6. I mean, it was fortunate for him that Tucker Poolman got COVID and then Nathan Beaulieu was injured, but Logan Stanley became a full-time player last year, partly because of his some good fortune, but because of the work that he put in during extended off-season. I think those guys need to both have a great summer. There's a 3-man competition for that 6th job, and go out and see what happens and try to win that job. And if you're Logan Stanley, you're not happy with just getting into the NHL. You want more, right? You want to be more than a 3rd pairing guy. So I think there's tons of motivation for all 3 of those guys. I don't see it being an issue. However, somebody's going to have to be patient, and there is certainly an impact on those players in terms of how quickly they can make it to the National Hockey League.
We have a little bit of time. Jeff Hamilton just showed that Kevin Cheveldayoff is going to 4:15.
Yeah, yes,
so
sir.
I wanted to ask you this: win now mode. I agree with you. I think the Jets showed that they're trying to get to that. Here's the one thing I wanted to go back to this quickly, because I agree with you. I think Gustafsson has to play at the NHL level this year. I just wonder this: the trend that we've seen from teams in the playoffs so far, and what we've seen that kind of succeeding in the playoffs, we saw it with Montreal, saw it to a degree with Tampa Bay, is that they've added their depth through veterans, right? Like you take a look at that, 4th line that the Montreal Canadiens had. That's kind of the direction people are going, cheap veterans to do that. Now, Nate Thompson, Trevor Lewis were a version of that. And I know I'm going to be inviting the scorn of a lot of people out, a lot of Jets fans out there by maybe even suggesting this. But I just wonder if you're in a position where you're bringing in Gustafsson and Vesalainen, who, yes, has played some NHL games, but he hasn't played a ton. Jansen Harkins, who, yes, has about a half season under his belt, but is still pretty much cutting his teeth. Dominic Toninato, it's the same thing. I know you're talking about the potential for them, and maybe the question is, do they need to go somewhere else? Because the one thing I think is, if you are in win now mode and you are trying to eliminate as many risks as you possibly can, is it not a risk to have 33% of your forward group, even if they are the bottom 33%, cutting their teeth in a year that you are trying to win it all?
I mean, Sean, Christian Vesalainen is a first-round draft pick in 2017. Like, this is not a 19-year-old kid trying to work his way into the lineup.
They're still
same with Gustafsson.
He is a guy trying to work his way into the lineup, because it wasn't a full-time guy last year.
Sorry, I said he's not a 19-year-old trying to work his way into the lineup.
But the point that I'm making here is
Yeah.
that there's 4 guys here who have yet to get their feet fully underneath them at the NHL level. Now, maybe it'll happen, but there's 4 guys. 33% of their forward group has to get their feet underneath them at the NHL level. Is that problematic for a team that is in win now mode?
Yeah, I mean, not for me. I mean, Jansen Harkins is a second rounder from 2015. Like, these are not young kids. It's their time. They have to have that time to progress. They've marinated. They've had their chance. I mean, could the Jets be looking for upgrades at some point if those guys can't handle the job? Absolutely. But they absolutely have earned the opportunity to get that chance. And I think they deserve that chance. Same with Dominic Toninato. He doesn't have a ton of NHL experience, but he's not a young guy. He's been a dominant AHL player, and he's been an effective fourth liner at the NHL level. So to me, it's not like when you were trying to implement young kids in this scenario. I mean, it's always going to be interesting. I mean, can Toninato work his way onto the penalty kill, or what's going to happen with Jansen Harkins? Can he become a penalty killer? I mean, we know that as Nate Thompson and Trevor Lewis were the second penalty killing unit, and their backup, the 5th penalty killer, was Mason Appleton. So they're down 3 penalty killers. I give one of those spots immediately to David Gustafsson, and then something has to happen with that 4th spot. You have to either convert somebody, or you have to go out and get somebody on the 4th line to play that role. Maybe that role is Dominic Toninato. We'll see. Sean, I understand where you're coming from, and it could be something that needs to be addressed down the road, but I have absolutely zero concern with having Christian Vesalainen or David Gustafsson become full-time players, and I think Jansen Harkins has more to give. We're a year and a half from a time when Jansen Harkins was helping to fill in on the second line, so I don't think there's going to be a difficulty in trusting those type of players in that role. Does that mean they're good enough is that a good enough fourth line to win the Stanley Cup? Well, that's up to them to show. But the other thing that we know about the Jets, they have a very strong top 6, and that includes the needing Pierre-Luc Dubois to bounce back from a tough year. But Nikolai Ehlers, for me, I think is going to take another important step this year. I think his opportunity and ice time is going to be on the rise once again, and I think that they're ready to take. I mean, they're back into contender status. They've gone from bubble team to contender. Are they the Stanley Cup favorite? Absolutely not. And until they can show that they are, we'll see where they are. But right now, for me, they're a legitimate playoff team. And if they want to move from playoff team to Stanley Cup contender, that's up to them to take that next step.
Well, talking about them being a playoff team, let's take a look at what happened in the Central Division today. I mean, I take a look at, you got to be one of the 4 teams getting in there, or at least the top 3. I don't think we're too worried about what's going to be happening in the Pacific Division this season. But I take a look at this, and I think that they're a lock to make the playoffs, because I take a look at what's happening around. And unless you're a big believer in what Chicago has been doing, I know some people are. Our buddy Michael Trakos thought that they did an absolutely phenomenal job in Chicago. I'm not sure I'm sold on it, but Colorado looked like they got a little bit weaker. I'm not blown away by anything that the Arizona Coyotes did in the offseason necessarily, at a team that's moving into the Central Division. Dallas adds Suter. Maybe, I know that you're a big believer that COVID kind of waylaid them last year, and you meant that you expect them to be back this season. Minnesota loses Suter and Parise. I'm not sure how many of those holes they plug.
Well, I mean, Parise was a healthy scratch, though, right? I mean, Parise was until late, and he played well when he came back in.
For sure, but I guess what I'm saying is, are the Winnipeg Jets team the only team that got significantly better around this unrestricted free agency time period in the Central Division?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that. I mean, what I would say right now, there's Colorado, and I think Arizona is in the lottery running, and I think Colorado is at the top, and I think you have 5 teams for 4 spots, basically. I think Chicago has improved, but they've also got some off-season issues that they need to take care of, right? I know, obviously, some folks, we're not going to get into that right now, but we know that's something that needs to be taken care of, and we're going to flat out say, Sean, you and I are in obvious agreement over this. This is something that needs to be resolved, and it's something that can never happen again in the NHL. So that, that needs to happen. So when it comes to off the ice, I think Chicago has improved their hockey team, but there's a lot of other things that they need to take care of. There's no doubt about that. I do think Dallas is a playoff team. Are they a lock? We'll see, but I think that Dallas is a good bet to rebound. St. Louis, I like the addition of Buchnevich, and there's no doubt about that. I think they're still a contender, but I basically think that it's 5 teams for the four spots behind, and that's no knock on the Pacific Division, but to me in the Pacific Division, it's Vegas, Edmonton, and then everybody else, whether that's Calgary or Vancouver. I think we're looking at 5 teams from the Central making the playoffs and 3 from the Pacific. But where the Jets fit, I would say that they're closer to the top of the Central than the bottom, but they're in the there's right now it's the 2 to 5 or whatever is I think it's too early to try to predict who's going to be where, but I think that the Jets are a contender, definitely a contender in the Central Division, and I think they're a definite playoff team. And whether you're second or fifth, or maybe potentially can they beat Colorado if Colorado doesn't have the goaltending, but I would also be wary of that. I think that Colorado is still the best team in the Central, but the Jets are going to be motivated to show that they can hang with the Colorado Avalanche. I think that's how I would describe it.
Yeah, boy, the way things have played out over the last little while, I almost forgot that the St. Louis Blues existed, and that's crazy to talk about a team that won the Cup just a couple of years ago. But I mean, it feels like, I don't know, suddenly it feels like the Jets left this monster of a Central Division. I feel like they're coming back, and I'm not sure that I feel that way about them anymore. Granted, we don't know what Minnesota is going to look like. Clearly, they took steps this season that we didn't get to see up close. I'm interested to see what that looks like. I think you're right. Dallas is kind of Dallas. I find as and I believe quite a bit in them. I picked them to go to the Stanley Cup final last season, but I see them as a team more on the decline than a team on the rise. I kind of see the St. Louis Blues as the same thing. I honestly think that the Jets make the playoffs and make it comfortably this season. I'm not overly worried about it. I think that would be a pretty safe bet. But let's
not discount Minnesota. Minnesota had a great year.
That's what I'd say.
Kaprizov, I know what you mentioned. I mean, I think that they really got a lot better than what we had seen previously, and he added an offensive dynamic that had been holding them back previously. Back end, I mean, I think Matt Dumba's going to take a big step. There's opportunity there with Suter's minutes being diminished. We know that Brodin has been a guy who's been a good player. Goligoski, you and I both think it's probably a little bit too high a salary for him on a 1-year deal, but you don't have to pay the term. So it's super interesting, and how that how the buyout money is going to impact things is also super interesting when it comes to the Wild and their future. But I'm with you. I mean, and St. Louis. I mean, Tarasenko is going to be moved. What are they going to get for him? I mean, that to me is the
I don't think much.
Is the game break? He's a deal breaker. We know Ryan O'Reilly is still a great player, and we know that they still have a pretty solid back end, and we know that Binnington has won a cup. But, I mean, there are questions about all teams in the Central Division outside of Colorado, and I think that Winnipeg addressed their biggest questions. So I agree with you. I think that they're closer to Colorado than they are to, the middle of the pack, I guess, if you will. But there's still a significant, ground to make up. I mean, let's not forget the Colorado Avalanche are coming off a President's Trophy winning season. So that's a big area to kind of bridge that gap, but I do think that the Jets are in a much better position to try and bridge that gap than they were 48 hours ago.
Just to keep it real time, Kenny, Enor tap or Enor top wants your thoughts on the Hoffman signing.
Not a fan really of it. He's a sniper for sure. Canadians had trouble scoring goals later on in the playoffs, so I understand it for sure. But I mean, I don't see Mike Hoffman being the guy that puts them over the top. The St. Louis Blues were asking Mike Hoffman to score and be a sniper for them too, and it didn't work out there. So I don't necessarily think he's going to a better place to get him. I mean, this is a guy who can put the puck in the net, 30 plus goals, but he's a that's his skill. His skill is scoring goals. He's not a good defender. He's not hard to play against. He's not big. He's fast, and he can shoot. So, I mean, does that help the Montreal Canadiens? I think maybe if he's playing with Nick Suzuki, it might help. But I don't see Nick or Mike Hoffman being the kind of guy that makes you go from really good to super elite. But, I mean, we'll see. I mean, this guy's also motivated to get back to the level he was at previously. So, but personally, I'm not a huge fan of the move.
I mean, I don't think they're at all the same kind of player, but it kind of seems like you're letting Thomas Tatar go and you're bringing that in. It sounds like when you described him, even though they go about it very different ways, kind of seems like you're saying the same thing about the same player. Fast and, an ability to shoot is what each of those players had. It was everywhere else that they fell down. And if Thomas Tatar was not the guy that you wanted in your lineup during the playoffs, I'm not sure that Mike Hoffman ends up being there as well.
Agreed.
We should get right through to this. This is the last question I'm going to have for you, maybe potentially foreshadowing your article that's going to come out on sportsnet.ca. But the idea of the patience that Kevin Cheveldayoff has shown with this Winnipeg Jets core, it's clearly a core he's believed for a long time is a championship core that just needs the right pieces around it. Do you think the right pieces are here now? And do you think that this core is now on the clock on proving what it can do? Players like Scheifele, Wheeler, Nick Ehlers, Kyle Connor, are they on the clock?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good way to put it. I think that in the last 2 years, I think the Jets could, and I think they have said it. I mean, I think that Blake Wheeler said that the window changed after going to since 2019, the defense core was, turned over. I mean, this is an obvious fact. They lost their entire right side plus Ben Sherrod. So it was 2 years of kind of rechurning or trying to find out where things were at. I think that, the way I would describe it too, the no more time for excuses for the Winnipeg Jets. They have the pieces in place. They have the general manager showed confidence in them, Sean. Now it's time for the Jets to show Kevin Cheveldayoff that he was right to put his confidence and faith in this group. I think this is a group that is motivated to get back to that 2017, 18, 2018, 19 level. We know that there was a tough second half that year and some turmoil and whatever else, but this is a team that has had some success in that one season, in that one playoff run, and they're motivated to get back to trying to be at that level. Also, sure, Paul Maurice and his coaching staff, there's pressure on them, but I think right now the pressure is on the players to deliver, Sean. I think that's the way I would describe it. Kevin Cheveldayoff has given them a couple extra pieces. Now it's time for the players to take that next step in their development and try to get back to that level and do what they can to try and win a championship, because that's what every team wants to do.
Couldn't agree more, Ken. And I'm trying to figure out this debate in my head. It's been suggested a couple times. Was this the ending show of season 1 or the beginning show of season 2? I have no idea.
Let's call it the ending of season 1. I'm going to be confident in that.
It feels more like the ending of season 1, but I have a feeling I'm going to wake up in a cold sweat one of these nights and be kept up all night trying to answer that question. But Ken, it was great catching up with you again. Awesome for us to have Nate Schmidt here. You booked that. Great work with that. And once again, our audience, I'm glad you had the opportunity to meet Nate Schmidt on this format and be able to express your appreciation for him and the kind of guy that he is and what we can look forward to. And I'm glad that we had you along for the ride here. I know people are calling for the headband. Didn't bring it today. It will show up in season 2. I can promise you that. But thank you so much for joining us, everyone. We got to get back to work. Kevin Cheveldayoff about to get up here. Thank you so much. We will see you next time.